Hey guys, in the last episode, I told you that I have been part of the first two alcohol free après ski parties in Innsbruck. I got asked many questions, and one of the most important questions was why aren't there any good alcohol free wine? And of course, this all comes down to the point on how much have you already tasted and what was your approach in tasting these wines? And since then, I have been giving 2 to 3 tastings, and I was asked the same question. And tonight, I had a rarity tasting for a birthday party, and we were talking about alcohol free wines as well. And the question came up again. So, there are many facts to consider when we talk about good alcohol free wine. And there was a recent article in the New York Times asking, why is it so hard to find good alcohol free wines? And this episode brings out the factors. Why is it so tough? What are the reasons? And how can we solve the problem? And in addition, how can we find good alcohol free wines? So let's get into the world of high quality alcohol free products. Let's go. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 249. And today, one of my favorite topics, alcohol free wine. Most alcohol free wines suck. Here's why and how to fix it. I want to talk about the harsh truth that most non-alcoholic wines do actually suck. Last year I tasted over 1,200 alcohol-free products, and I would say 80% of them were crap. So let's be real, if you tried a few non-alcoholic wines and thought, oh, this tastes like grape juice, you're not alone. And a lot of them are unbalanced, too sweet, too thin, something is missing, or they're just off. But here's the thing, it's not because making good non-alcoholic wine is impossible. It's because most of them are made in a way that sets them up for failure. So first of all, we have to differentiate between the fact that why is it so hard to make good non-alcoholic wine, and on the other side, why is it so hard to find good non-alcoholic wine? And there's a big difference between both of them. Finding and making are two different things. Making, we will talk about the facts, the parameters that drive this development in a second, is the one thing, and the other thing is how to find them, because still there are only a few shops, a few online shops also, so often online stores that are actually focused on good alcohol-free products. And it's the same with wine. We have to consider that when we talk about the consumer base and looking at it as a pyramid, that only the top is higher involved in the product, wine or alcohol-free wine, and only a small portion of it is focused on drinking really good stuff. The majority is just focused on having a good time together, enjoy their favorite drink, and this is where the entry-level brands come into play. So talking about wine and non-alcoholic wine, it's basically the same thing. We have to get rid of the idea that everything should be great. In the end, there's always two different choices, two different categories when it comes to products: the things I like and the things that I dislike. And finding your personal taste, your favorite product that really suits your palate is not impossible. It's actually quite easy. And the key is to taste as much as you can. But when we come to the fact that it is so hard to make and find good non-alcoholic wine, we always have to consider that only few people are able to differentiate between quality and taste. So first of all, when you come from the wine industry, when you like wine, the first thing you have to consider is it's tough if you want to find a perfect replica of your favorite full-strength wine, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment, actually. It's almost impossible to replace your favorite wine with a non-alcoholic version. We have to consider that it should be two different categories. It's the same thing like comparing tea to coffee. both of them can taste actually really good, but it's two different categories. So one, the teas, they can have a bitter taste. They can be very aromatic, very floral, whatever it. I mean, it really depends on the tea. And on the other side, we have coffee, which can also be, well, bitter in the end. There are tannins in it, but the taste is totally different. The mouthfeel is different. It's two different categories, and we should approach this to talking about alcohol-free wine. There are actually wines that taste good, wines I like, and it's the same with non-alcoholic wines. And the challenge is to find your favorite product. So what I usually call the wine brain problem is when you're coming from wine and you're looking for a good non-alcoholic version, take your wine brain and throw it away. See non-alcoholic wine as a whole new category where you just want to explore everything and find your favorite product, but stop comparing constantly a non-alcoholic wine to its alcoholic counterpart. That just doesn't work because usually the alcohol-free versions will fall short. So looking at this as a whole new category is to enjoy non-alcoholic wines and to judge them on its own terms. And there have only been a few studies setting up kind of a tasting structure when we come down to a more scientific approach when it comes to wine, but just see it as a different category and try to taste as much as you can. So why do most non-alcoholic wines fail? Alcohol does a lot more than just giving buzz to a product. It adds body, texture, and complexity. And when you take it out, the product can feel hollow because when you're talking to experts that are into alcohol-free wine, or at least in producing alcohol-free wine, the dealcoholization process, they all tell you the same, if they're being honest, that you lose 40 to 60% of the original product. And we all know that it's a complex process to make wine, especially good wine. But then putting this wine through dealcoholization, you lose a lot of structure, of body, of complexity, and of the original profile. So this is where it comes into play that we can see this as a whole new category. Secondly, most of the alcohol-free wines are made with very, very cheap production methods. Most companies just want to have an alcohol-free version that is affordable. So we're talking about products up to 10 to 12 euro. And there are many people who actually like this stuff, and even people that have barely drank any alcohol, or at least alcoholic wine. We need those products. If we want to get to a society that is interested in moderate drinking, in drinking less but better, we need alcohol-free products, and we also need the big brands jumping on that train. And considering the whole market of wines and alcohol-free wines, the big brands have always played a very, very important role. I mean, just talking about one specific product, one of the most successful red wines in Germany is Doppio Passo. It's a Primitivo that is exported from Italy to Germany, roughly about 15 million bottles a year. And it's not what people that are very highly involved in wine would consider as a high quality product. But actually, it fits the palate, it suits the palate of many, many people, which makes the wine more accessible, and people just like the taste. And it's a no-brainer that companies like Doppio Passo are entering the alcohol-free category with offering their alcohol-free counterparts. And I mean, just talking about this usual 5 to 10% rate of, or percentage of alcohol-free versions to the full-strength ones, we are talking about 1 million or 1.5 million bottles of Doppio Passo. And we can reach that. It's the same with, I don't know, brands such as Rotkäppchen, for example. Rotkäppchen produces over 200 million bottles each year. And they are on a mission to produce 50 million bottles of alcohol-free Rotkäppchen. And again, this is nothing many people would consider as high quality, but people like the taste because the average palate is not that far developed, and people are just looking for, what do I like? And when you put Rotkäppchen in a blind tasting with other sparkling wines, usually they're not the worst. People just like the taste. It's balanced, it's round, it's well made, but it's still entry level. There's a lack of complexity, there's a lack of length, but still many people are loving it. And when it comes to the fact balance, for me, the most important thing when it comes to a product, many alcohol-free, de-alcoholized wines are they have a lack of balance. It's usually they are too sweet, and the sweetness is imbalanced. Usually, the missing body is covered with sugar, so that you just de-alcoholize a wine, then you add sugar, and if this is not balanced between aromas, acidity, and the sweetness, you just have a bad wine. And most importantly, it's the same with wine. Acidity usually is the backbone of wine. Acidity and tannins give wine a backbone that carries the aromas, the structure, and everything. So when you use, for example, varieties that don't have high acidity, then you end up in having a very, entry level and sometimes flat wine. So acidity is very, very important in a wine and in an alcohol-free version. And in addition, the balance between all those components. And last but not least, many people that de-alcoholize wine are using the wrong varieties. And of course, some people might think that it should be actually easy to take a variety that is very, very successful in several regions, talking about, I don't know, Pinot Grigio, talking about Vermentino, Trebbiano, Lugana, for example, because people tend to love these varieties, these wine styles, but if there's a lack of acidity or complexity or just, a higher approach to the variety, then you can't produce high quality wine. Some grapes work better for the for the de-alcoholization, some just don't, but many producers just don't adjust their approach when it comes to de-alcoholizing wines. There are some wine styles that actually work pretty well when it comes to de-alcoholization. Talking about the different wine styles, the easiest way to make a good and approachable alcohol-free wine is a sparkling one. So when you choose a higher in acidity, higher aromatic variety that you de-alcoholizes and then you add bubbles to it, and usually it's carbonated, then you have a very fresh wine on the palate, and the CO2 just carries aromas and everything, makes the wine feel fresh. So this might be the easiest category. In addition, when you use very, very aromatic varieties that already are quite present, even if you take away 40 to 60% through the de-alcoholization process, they are still present, and some are even able to keep their original character. Talking about Riesling, for example, or the aroma profile of a Sauvignon Blanc. These wines can actually be very intense and charming after the de-alcoholization process. Of course, they have to be balanced with sugar again, but in the end, aromatic whites are the second category that are quite approachable when it comes to alcohol-free wine. And when we talk about rosé and red, it's getting more and more difficult because usually if you're looking for an alternative to your favorite red wine, red wines are bold, they have a fuller body, they're usually quite concentrated, and the high alcohol level between 13 to 16%, I mean, if this is missing, then you have a lack of structure, of complexity, of body and everything. But if you are a fan of, let's say, fruity reds, talking about Beaujolais style of, very fruity Pinot Noir, for example, there can actually be some good alcohol-free alternatives. Most reds actually struggle because the presence of alcohol gives them the structure, and if this is missing, well, you end up in having quite, entry-level red wine. There will be Cabernets and everything in the future, and I mean, technology is developing, so we will see better red wines, tastier red wines in the future. Currently, my favorite ones so far were either very, very fruit-driven and high in acidity, high acidic wines, red wines. But I guess with the development of technology, we will see bolder reds without alcohol in the future. So how to fix it? What makes a good non-alcoholic wine? First of all, you should start with the right base wine. So the choice of a high quality base wine is almost everything. Not every wine is suited for de-alcoholization. You need, a good aroma profile, the presence of acidity, and then again, usually it's easier to have a wine, either a white, a rosé, or a red, that is not super bold and super high in alcohol. So when you de-alcoholize it, you still have this original freshness you would expect from the product with alcohol. And then you have to adjust the wine after the alcohol removal with balance. So the balance has to be there. The balance between sugar and acidity and the aroma profile, it just has to be in balance. You just have to work a lot with this product. And again, talking about your wine brain, usually we tend to romanticize the process of winemaking to this has to be a crafted product. And of course, these are the best wines that are usually made. So if you have this approach to liking crafted wines, high quality wines that are actually made as close as possible to nature, if we can put it like that, without the adjustment of tannins of wines and everything, the wine can be edgy and it can express the vintage, the region, whatever. But again, talking about the pyramid, many people just want to have a balanced product. So this accounts for wine and also for the dealcoholized versions. The fine tuning is key. And sometimes we have to get rid of the idea that this all is romantic, and we should more consider that it is, I don't know, the development of the perfect product. So the fine tuning of acidity, of sweetness, and the aromatics is key. And then, of course, talking about high quality, we have to use the best technology available, and this makes the wine more expensive. So some producers invest in the gentle dealcoholization techniques. There are many patterns currently going on or are present that preserve the flavor or just, separate the spirit from the aromas and flavors and just then put it back to the wine. And this brings me to the last point. You have to be willing to pay more for quality. And there are many studies showing that we tend to pay more for a product with a high alcohol level because alcohol is very, very closely connected to the price. And a product that wants to call itself wine cannot be expensive without the presence of alcohol. And this is actually not true. Just considering the process, making a dealcoholized wine is even more expensive than the alcoholic counterpart because there's another step, the dealcoholization, that is actually expensive. You have to pay for it. But compare it to your favorite wine is actually unfair. So consider that if you want to have a high quality wine, you have to pay at least, I would say, 15 euro, because 15 euro, when we talk about the Central European world, is for me the level where you can expect a higher quality with these gentle dealcoholization processes and preserving aromas and flavors. So expect to pay, I would say, 15 euro plus, maybe 20 euro for something that is worth drinking of higher quality. So that brings me to the last question. Right now we know why most dealcoholized wines suck, how to fix that. The last question is, where can I find them? And if you're looking for high quality non-alcoholic wines, it's the same with wine. You have to avoid the supermarket. You won't find high quality products in supermarkets. The margins are lower. You need many, many bottles to suit the portfolio of a supermarket. So we're talking about special retailers, about specialized shops that actually focus on higher quality products, usually to suit gastronomy, usually to suit the palate of high involved people. And then you can actually be able to find high quality products. So check specialized online retailers or your stores that are in place that focus on premium alcohol-free options, and look for producers that focus only on non-alcoholic products rather than treating it as an afterthought. I mean, for me, it is actually a good idea to have an alcohol-free wine in your portfolio if you're usually selling just full-strength versions of it, because it is a business opportunity. It just broadens the peer group and it gives more alternatives, and you can actually sell them as well. And it also, brings money into the wine industry. But the brands that actually know how to make high quality products are the ones that are specialized in it. So look for brands that have specialized on alcohol-free products, on alcohol-free wines, because they usually have the experience on making a higher quality product, because there's a lot of product development involved. And if you're at a restaurant, ask for recommendations. Some are finally catching on, adding up high quality wines to their wine menus, serious options to their lists, and they want to give you the opportunity to drink high quality products. And last but not least, there is the most important fact of all: the mindset shift for every one of us. Stop comparing and start enjoying. See it as a whole new category. Taste as much as you can. If you expect a one-to-one replacement to your favorite full-strength wine, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you approach non-alcoholic wines as its own category, like how coffee and tea are different, but both are great in their own way, you might just find something you love and your favorite product. If you need any tips on that, just let me know. As I said, I tasted a lot of products last year, and it's just April, and I have already tasted over 300 products this year. So the market is growing. There are many, many products available. If you need a tip, send me an email at podcast@pinotpixel.com. Hit me up on social media and have fun while tasting through the amazing world of alcohol-free wines. See you on Saturday with the weekly update. Ciao, ciao.